Hello and welcome back to my modelling projects. Today I'm going to look at building this 1/48 scale SIA Marchetti from Special Hobby. However, I did have a decal mishap towards the end of the build, which forced me in the end to change my colour scheme to the scheme you see in front of you. So what I've done, the whole of the video goes right the way up to where I have the mishap, and then I quickly change my color scheme, and I've done it in a short burst because the beginning of the build kind of shows you how I progressed through the build right up to that point. So there's no point in doing any further changes other than the fact that I'm going to change the color scheme and the decal scheme. So if you want, come along and join me and see how I recover the disappointment towards the end. Okay, so here we are with the contents of the box. It's not a review, it's just a quick skim through what we've got. So we've got the instruction manual, and I'll tell you what I do like is when I look through the instruction manual, there's a good bit of information there. There's some really nice colour schemes. I particularly like this one, and I do particularly like that one, but also like that one. I did open the box earlier for my grandson and asked him which one he would like me to do. He asked me if I'd do this one. I said, yep, I will do. His choice, and he's going to get that one. The instructions look pretty good, but you know, it's the same with any instructions. It depends on the modeller's taste, doesn't it, really? So I don't normally have problems with instructions because I have a good look at them and decide how I'm going to approach them. Not bad. Nice little bit of information there for doing that. We've got a lovely sheet of decals. So yeah, there's a good bit of info there for quite a few selections of aircraft from the instruction manual. A little bit of canopy, and it's really good, looks really good. And then we got two pieces of sprues, and that is it. So we're gonna, like I say, I'm not going to go and have a close look at the detail. Detail looks good enough for me. Right, having a quick look at the parts list, what I'm going to do to save any confusion for myself is it's marked on here. There are crosses through parts that are not needed, where you can see them here and there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut them off and just get them out of the way so I don't mix any parts up. I'm going to sort that out now. And also the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get all the colours ready that I'm going to use for this particular subject. So I've got, for the yellow, I've got Mr. Colour C329. For whatever black's needed, there's not a great deal there, it's probably just for the wheels. XF1 Tamiya, and also XF53 is a neutral grey on the actual kit itself. It's Mr. Colour paints C51, or sorry, H51 and C11. Now I use a colour chart, a Humbrol colour chart, to look for the colours that I want sometimes, just to make sure I'm on the right track. Unfortunately, these two colours that I'm looking for on this is not listed on here. So I've done a quick check. It comes up with XF53. I think the only grey it's going to be needed for is perhaps the undercarriage and maybe the propellers. So these are the colours that I need. Also, I may use this colour, X17 Tamiya Pink. I've used it before. If it causes me a problem, I'll revert to some other colour for this. And basically this is going to be the backing colour, the base colour for the yellow. And I have used it before in some other models and it's worked quite well. So as long as I get the primer set right for this, and it needs to either be a white primer or grey primer, no other primer, I've got to make sure that I get the right base colour of the primers first. So I should probably do a test on that to make sure, and if not, then I will use a white. But this has worked well before, so I want to try it on this because the whole model is yellow, and I think this will work well to make that yellow pop and not be too bright. I mean, if it's a white background, it could be too bright, and if I put the pink on, it will hopefully bring it down a bit. If you don't put any base colour on there, like a white or that pink, you'll have all manner of issues trying to get that colour right. We'll have a look and we'll see how we get on with that. And if it doesn't work, then fine. It's something that if you're watching this, you can say, oh, I'm not going to try that. But if it works, then it's something that you could have a go at a later date. Right, I'm going to start with the cockpit area. As always, I think that's the usual format for aircraft anyway. So what I've done is I've cut all the pieces that I need to assemble the cockpit. So what I've done is I've taken all the little bits that I know are going to fall all over the place. I've left them, half on their sprue, so that will help me paint them up. I'll leave them on there until I'm actually ready for them to be used. If there's a bit of flash on there, I will clean them up. All those pieces are off there, and if I quickly show you on here, what I tend to do is tick all the bits that I need. I tick them off as I cut them off, so I know I've got them all. And then any other little bit of information I need to add to this page to help me further through the progress through the build is I've circled that because that is a clear part. I'm not going to put that on yet, so that will wait. Then there's a little bit of information here, and I'm doing scheme B, so I need part 37 plus decals. I've not got the decals off yet, but this is the piece I'm going to do for this. These two are a bit off, so I'll put a cross through those in a minute so I know I don't need them. And then I've got all the other little bits and pieces to help or to go further onto the build. Now, one thing I've noticed while putting the two half fuselage together, I will trim it up in a minute. I haven't taken all of the tabs off. As you go around, you probably can't see it. Well, hopefully you could. There's a gap here on the top there. You can just see that gap. Problem is there, someone's not spotted it, but there is a pin on this side. Let me just see if I can get some light in there for you. There's a pin there. There's nothing there. You just need to make sure that that gets cut off, and then problem solved. It's no big deal, but I just thought I'd point that out while we're in the process of putting this little bit together. The next stage for me now is to build up the cockpit, put that together, and give that some protection for when I'm doing the remaining parts or the remainder of the build. I'll come back when I've got all this stuff ready to go in, and I'll show how I put that together. Right, what I need to do first is I need to remove, well, I've taken them off at the moment, so I'll just quickly show you. There was two tabs. There was one tab here and one tab here, which was actually impeding the fitment of these two parts here on this section here. So I've taken them off with this. I can now check that these will fit okay. I know they fit okay, so the next stage is to move on from there onto here. So what I'll do now is I'll just carry on. I'll put some background music on, and we'll just plow on and get this model built. And if I come up with an issue, I'll stop and let you know. Okay, I just want to point something out before going any further with the cockpit details. What I've done is I've put the fuselage together just temporarily. I need to put B37 and B41 in place at some stage once I get this all together. Now, what I have noticed is, in fact, if I pull this in front, you can probably see daylight through that gap. It's quite a big gap, and that is caused by this piece and this piece. I've closed it up. I put this piece in, so I'll just show you. So it's nice and closed now. Put this piece in where it's supposed to go. So we'll put it in there. Oops, get it in. And we'll just get it in between where it should do. Pushed it nice and tight. And there you go. Before I do anything else, before I put any paint on inside or any of this, I'm going to correct this first, so I know that once I'm ready to put it all together, I haven't got any gaps to mess around with after I've painted everything. What I'll do is I'll crack on once I've got this bit out and come back with all the cockpit details and how I put that together. It's not clever, is it? So we'll crack on with that and see how we get on with that. Without going overboard with removing too much plastic, I've managed to sand down this part as much as I dare, and I've also managed to sand down the dials console. There's still a bit of a gap. I can deal with that, but I'm just afraid that if I go too far with this piece, I might lose some details on the edge. So I'm going to leave that as it is. I think I can deal with maybe filling that in a wee bit. And then this piece here is now doing what it should do. And then this piece will eventually sit in there, so the rear shelf that does actually fit in there quite well without any issues on with a gap here. We're there now with that, so now I can start cracking on with the rest of it. Now I've sorted out the bulkhead pieces in here to close this gap. I think the best thing for me to do is to place this bit in here and just glue it to one side, and I think I'll do that with this piece here and glue that to one side, and this piece I won't, because I'm going to paint that up. So I think the thing I'm going to do here is, because there is part B42, this part here will sit on top. Let me just show you. Will sit on top of this rail here, and you have to be careful because this piece here, if you look at it very closely, it's actually got a chamfer, so it's going in. It looks like this piece here, where it chamfers in, needs to go here. So I'm going to put that in there. Once I've glued this in place, I'll take the fuselage half off and then glue that in place, and hopefully once I've glued those I can separate it, so hopefully the glue doesn't sort of make its way around the other side of the fuselage. So I'm going to do that now. Hopefully that will solve a little issue for me. Well, that seems to have done the trick, gluing that bulkhead piece in first and this piece in, and then gluing the shelf on just to test fit. The cockpit bottom tub fits in nicely, so it just fit in the bottom, so that's going to save me an awful lot of grief. And all I need to do now is paint that and paint those obviously separately, but that and then I can sort out the seats and everything else that goes inside there, put it in, and then we can close that up, ready to do all the other bits. That's worked. I think that's a good choice, putting these two pieces in first. I've got all the cockpit internals painted black. That is what some reference pictures sort of show for this particular colour scheme, which I looked up online. So it's black inside, including the dials console there. That's black. So what I'm going to do now, rather than attach the seats, I'm going to do the seats separately. I have tested that this one I thought might cause me a problem, but that does actually fit in there quite well once all this is closed in. So what I'm going to do with this is do the same with the front seats, is put all of the harnesses on, which comes as a decal to the kit. So this bit here, do that separately, put a little bit of roughing up on that, a bit of dry brush, same with that, and then varnish the inside to protect it all. Then get the decals on these there's two little decals that can go on there, so I'll get those done, paint these dials in, and make that a little bit more special than it looks at the moment, and then we're on to the next stage. Going to use this colour as well, Vallejo 988. Again, it's an old paint, it's khaki, but I don't use a lot of it. It just helps when it comes to doing a little bit of dry brushing. Again, I put a little bit on the brush, take it off, don't need it all on there, and I'll just, not everywhere, just, you probably not see the difference, but I can see the difference. So, and then I'll just put a little bit over here, a bit around where the feet are, bit of wear, maybe wearing away. There you go, that's it. I don't need to do much, that's enough. Use that nice tonal effect. Right, I'm going to do the decals for the seats and the dials console on here. So I'm going to get decal F and G taken off, and I'm going to also remove decals H and I and J. We'll get those done so that they're ready to go in once I've got the fuselage halves together and the base of the cockpit on, so we can then just tie everything up. So I'm going to do those first and then see if I can get some close-up details for some of the dials. So that's where I am at the moment. I'm going to finish the seats and the dials console first with the decals. So I've cut the bits off I need from the decal sheets. I've noticed it's probably a printing anomaly, but I've noticed, I'm pretty sure this is a 4-seater, or it can take two extra passengers at the back. So when you look closely at the details here about putting the decals on, I noticed that you're set up for your two front pilots, and then you've got your setup at the back here for passengers. Now, when I look at the number of decals, it looks like it's set up so that it actually takes 4 people. So I is set on here. So you've got I, let me pull this over, it's set on, so I is set on here. So you've got I, and I, and I decals. There's 4 of those. And then obviously H, you've got H that side, and H should be that side, and it should be that side, because there's 4 of them. It seems to suggest that there's perhaps a printing error here. So I'm actually going to set this up as if it was a 4-seater, because J also caters for looking like there's extra passengers. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but there's 8 of those. So I think this section here is an error. So I'm going to do it so it's set up to take 4. So I put the decals onto the dials console. I used this AK flat white real colours marker to mark all the little dots and bits and bobs, just to give it a little bit of realism, and hopefully you can see it. Let me just pull that out of the way. Hopefully you can see that. So that I've just got to varnish that over to protect that a little bit. Same with the chairs, they've been moved out of the way. So put that there. Yeah. Let me just have a look. Just got to varnish those, and varnish that. We're pretty much good to go to completing the cockpit area, apart from the joysticks and that. Right, previous to this, I recorded how I was going to set this up inside with a piece of paper and use the pilot seat to bridge this. Unfortunately, I don't know why, I got no sound. I'm going to try and explain it now. I made a paper template to go inside the cockpit area and use the pilot seat as a bridge to stop it from caving in. And then I sealed it with some masking tape. So that's going to stay on there now throughout the rest of the build, just to protect the inside. And any other touch-ups I can do with a hand paint if I can't do it with a spray brush. So from now on, that stays on, and the rest of the build, I will work around it, and hopefully I don't damage this as I'm going through. Got all the parts I need for the wing assembly now. These are all the bits that I've taken off the sprue. They're all here ready. The beauty of some of these parts is the two aileron parts, they're one piece, and the tail fins, they're one piece, and the rudder is one piece, as you can see. So that makes life a bit easier. Just got to tidy them up and make sure they all fit nice and snug. A couple of little pieces that I'll need to introduce down to this section in a short while, but I've got everything I need now to start on the wings. Something I discovered while connecting this top section to the lower section of the wing, and just show you, there is a pin here, and I think there's just some molding issues here, but also this lug here, either that one or this one will need to be removed. This one will need to be removed, because I didn't have it on the first, this one, but I have for this one, this side of the wing. So now if I just put it in place where I think it should be, let me just show you. There is that gap. You can see daylight through there, and that's because there is a lug just down there. And also, when you try to close the end up, these pieces here inhibit it becoming flush. The next thing here really for me is to take these down, take that off, sand that down a bit, and do the same on here and here to get them flush. Didn't happen on this one, I'm pleased to say. Obviously just test fitting on this one is a bit odd while it would be like that, but that's what I've got to do now. So that's the next thing I've got to do on here. Right, just quickly to show you the result of taking off the plastic that's inside those wing sections I've just mentioned. That's brought that back together now, so I can glue that in place, and then I can have a look at how the ailerons fit. Right, on to the ailerons next. What I did with the ailerons is I give them a good clean up all around, and also a bit of a clean up along here. They do fit very well, actually. There's a little bit of persuasion, but not much. They go on obviously one way. So these three holes here with the three tabs, basically if you line it up and just gently push that in there, line it up, and just get those in line, and then what should happen is they will slot in just nicely. I'll put this other one in, I'll show you something so you're not to force anything, because it could break it. So you put the ailerons in. I've not glued them yet. Now there is a bit of a downward movement. So we can you see there? There is a bit of a downward there and there. Don't force them, leave them as they are. It looks like it's built in. They're both the same, because if you did force them, you're likely to break the tab. So just something to remind yourself of if you decide to have a go at this kit. We're just going to offer up the wing to the fuselage now, so it goes together fairly well. I just test fitted it. I just thought I'd show you how it went together. So you clip those two back bits in first, and then hold the back, bring it down to the front, and just make sure one side pushes in, and then you've got this little bit here which you just gently pop that in place, and that is set, ready for some glue. It's not as bad as I thought it would be. I don't know whether I have to do a bit of work here. I might. Ooh, let's have a look. Hopefully that's just popped in place. There you go. Right, that's not so bad. So what we'll do is we'll glue that in place. Well, actually, I'll take it apart and put some glue in the spot first, and then glue it in place properly. Okay, so here we are now with the wings stuck to the fuselage. A little bit more work to just polish off the edges and the seams on that. What I've done is I've made up the front nose area. It's only about 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. They all go together as this, and then once that's done, it fits fairly well on the nose. That's good. That's a good bit on the actual instructions. The only other issue I have at the moment, which I'll point out, is these I'm pretty sure they're wingtip tanks. The issue I have with them is that they don't have any pinholes in both of the locating areas, and the instructions kind of show that they've got some pinholes in them, if you can see here, just here. The wings, however, are correct to the plan. They're the pins. Unfortunately, be the right one when it goes in. Unfortunately, there is no pinholes. I'm not even going to guess. I'm going to cut them off and glue them as and when I'm ready. And then once I've got those done, once I've got that on as well, this piece, probably looking at doing the masking up the canopy, but the remainder I think is going to be prepping the aircraft for paint, and then all the other bits like the undercarriage and that'll just be done separately. So for now, I'm at the stage of getting these on, getting this sorted, prepping for primer and paint, and then take it from there. Okay, I've just discovered I've made an error while putting the wing tanks on and connecting the wings and so on and so forth, and the front nose. It's a tail sitter. So now what I've got to do is find a way of putting some weight in here without removing this and damaging anything. So what I'll do is I'll have a good think about what I'm going to do, and then I'll come back to either show you what I've done or how I've done it. Hopefully I've solved my problem of this being a tail sitter. Just quickly, what I've done is I found a hole in the front there. I basically tipped in some of this liquid gravity. Let me just show you so you can see this liquid gravity. I put some into a pipette, as you can see it there, and I gradually, slowly but surely, filled it into, or tipped it into there and filled up the front nose. Now it is loose in there. Unfortunately, I can't do anything about that. I have to be a bit careful because you probably can't see it, but if you can, they're just squeezing their way through here. So what I'm going to have to do here is I'm going to have to, over a period of time while I'm doing the model, is tip in some super glue to lock that in place. Like I say, I filled that up with some white glue, and then I filled up this hole a little bit with white glue to stop it from falling out all over the place. So only time will tell to see if I've solved that problem, stopping them from running all over the place, but it's kind of helped me. It doesn't seem to be tipping back as much, so hopefully I may have solved that problem, but only time will tell. I've found another little issue I was hoping not to have. Looking at the front undercarriage, and I've discovered there's a bit of an issue when it comes to fitting the main undercarriage leg, not the other piece, not this piece. On the instructions, I can quickly show you, this is what it's got to look like in the end, and these are the 3 parts that will make up this section. These 2 parts I'm not bothered about. It's this part which has become a problem. It has to go in to here and into a slot there. So that's that slot there, and that's this part that's already in place, been glued in when all this was put together. The other parts are not a problem. This is the problem. The problem we have is that this part is supposed to go down, slot into there, and go down and fit into this slot here and that slot there. I dare say it probably does fit if I didn't connect the box first, but that's not how I want to do it, because I like to do the undercarriage separate. So I can't now put this in there because of how wide that is. There's no way I can push that in there, and I've tried pushing it into there and then getting a pair of tweezers and trying to clip it in. It won't work without the fear of breaking everything. The best solution here is for me to cut, let me move that out of the way so you can see what I'm talking about, is to cut this side off and that side off, and then use the base as my gluing base. Then once this piece is attached, it should secure it fairly well. That's where we are with that one. Okay, so what I've got here is I've got two old wings that I'm not likely to use, and I'm going to test them for my yellow paint. So I've got, this one is grey primer, this one, as you can see, is white primer. Both Mr. Surfacer. The white is a 1500 and the grey is a 1200. So it don't really matter, but it's what I had in my paint stocks. So the next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to do one side of each of these wings with a pink, let that dry, and then I'm going to spray both the sides with a yellow to see what tonal effect I get, because I don't want it to be too bright. I want it to be sort of like slightly dampened down a bit. So I'm using these as my test bed to see which would be the best tonal effect for this particular model. This is the color that I'm looking for. I don't want it too bright, so I'm hoping that one of these solutions will be the best for this this model. I'll come back when I've got the yellow on. Right, here we are with the pink. I'll just show you the pink just to prove that I've put it on. And there's the white and there's the grey. So there's the pink. So we'll come back with some yellow on now. Okay, having finished my testing of the tonals paints for the yellow, you'll see here this wing is with the grey primer and a coat of yellow, and this is with the white primer and a coat of yellow, and you can see that there is a tonal difference. And if I turn them over, you can see tonal difference here with the grey primer and pink backing with the yellow, and the white primer and pink backing with the yellow. You can see that it's definitely changed in colour. So I've put them together, there's not a great deal of difference. They're pretty much similar. So if I put them to one side and put this in its place and bring them back, you can see they're definitely not the right colour match for this scheme. If I turn it over, you can see that this one, it definitely isn't a colour match for this scheme. And this one is nearly as close as I can get it, but I got a feeling an extra coat of paint will probably put that right. So this is the colour that I'm going to go with. It's straight, basically the white primer and the yellow paint on top. So that's where we're going to go with this one. Like I say, many modelers will probably agree with me that doing a yellow paint scheme can be quite difficult to get it the tonal effect right all the way around. It's kind of good to try and experiment with the different types of backings that you're going to use for this paint. I think this is an experiment for myself that's been worthwhile. So we'll crack on with this colour scheme now. After painting the airframe in its white primer, I come to the conclusion that it was probably best to take off this centre masking that I did earlier and glue in place the two-piece canopy. So that's what I'm going to do now. I wasn't going to, but it kind of made sense to do that. So I can get that all in, seal it all up, and then do a nice paint job on that with them in place. So that's what I'm going to do now. So I've got the yellow one, top and bottom, All I've got to do now is put the red on. So I'm going to use XF7. It's a flat red, which is a similar colour to what it says on the instructions here. Just to let you know, the yellow that I used, which I mentioned earlier, was C329 Mr. Colour. I mixed that with a 50-50 mix with Mr. Colour leveling thinner. It's gone on quite well. Doesn't look as if I need to do any sanding, to be honest with you, or polishing up. It looks very nice. All I've got to do now is mask up for the red, get the red done, a little bit of black to do. Then I'm looking to add the decals and then undercarriage, and then I think we're pretty much finished once it's had a coat of varnish. Masked everything up now, ready for the red paint. Just a few areas here and here, and around the back here and a bit on the front. And as you can see, I've masked all over. So hopefully I've covered everything I need covering and that I don't get any overspray. We'll come back when the red paint is on. Right, so the red's on now. I'm quite pleased with the outcome. There are a few little ingress bits that I'll deal with, but on the whole, I think that's starting to look the part. So, you know, obviously I've put that on the background so you can see. So I am more or less there. It just needs, I've got the black to do on there, which I will do next. I've got a little bit of the ingress in some of the areas here. So I'll do that with a paintbrush. But on the whole, I think that has turned out quite well. So here we are. The colour is all completed. I've done all my little bits and bobs that I need to do with the colour itself. I've now varnished it with my basic gloss varnish. Let me just show you the Homebrew clear gloss varnish. It's a water base, so you can paint it on quite freely with a flat paintbrush, and that is the kind of finish you get with that. But it, like I say, this is just for putting the decals on. When it comes to actually varnishing it with a good proper varnish, it won't be that one. It will be a better quality in my opinion anyway. But I've just got to put the decals on now. I'll try and show some on video, but I think the one that I won't show if I do is this long one that goes across here. I've got a feeling I'm going to need some close-up vision with that one. So I'll come back when I'm pretty well loaded up with the decals. Well, there's a bit of a disaster. It looks like I've either got to mask this up and put the lines on, or just completely take the lines off. Let me just show you. Can you see here? All of the decals has completely, all of the paint or whatever they used to build the decals up, it's completely disintegrated. As you can see, it's just brushed off. It's not good at all. That's nothing to do with me. I've used my micro set to go on there, as you can see, and if I put the brush underneath, you can see bits have just broken off, and I've done nothing more than place it where it needs to go. As you can see, that is completely disintegrated. Quite disappointed with that. I don't know, I've got two choices here. I'll take it off and I'll try and recover this bit here and see if I can put it back on the paper, and I'll use that. I'm going to completely not bother with those. If it's going to be like this on this one, the other side will be that as bad. I just hope the remainder of the decals are not like that. What I'm going to do is take that off now, try and salvage the roundel, and where possible try and keep that roundel there, but I'll try and put everything else on. But what a disappointment. Okay, just quickly, just to sort of say that I had a bit of a decal disaster. Pretty poor, really. I don't think it was my fault. Previous clip to this will show some paint or some colour come away from the stripe I was putting down the side there. I decided I wasn't going to do that. I'll leave it, but I'll try and recover the roundels from it, which I did. So I put them on. I thought, well, I'll carry on and put some more decals on. Doing so, I thought, I left it overnight and had a good think about it. I came back and I thought, right, okay, what I'll do, I'm going to put the stripes on. So I'm going to mask the whole thing up. But before I do, I'll varnish these to give them some protection while I'm putting the masking tape on. I gave it 30 minutes, come back, looked at the decals on there and noticed that the carrier film was silvering. I had a closer look and also it was lifting. So I peeled the carrier film away, and I've got an example here. This carrier film here was for this, and I had no choice because it was peeling at the top here and I wasn't going to be able to hide that. So I did nothing more than peel that off and damage that. And also, when I started looking at all the other carrier films, this one peeled up, so I pulled that off and it damaged that. And that one, that just fell off. So I've decided now that I'm not going to do this colour scheme. Colour scheme is going to change, and I'm going to have this colour scheme, the one on the box, because I'm a bit worried with regards to if I do any of the other colour schemes, all the stripes and pretty patterns I got on there, I can paint a lot of this in, and I've just got these little rudimentary decals to add on. So that is what I'm going to do now. So I'm going to sand that down as best as I can and then give that a coat of grey primer and then start doing the colour scheme on that. So when I come back, this will have changed from this colour to this, hopefully. Like I said earlier, I was going to remove the yellow. So what I did with the yellow was I gave the entire airframe a rub down with a 800 grit to sort of bite into the paint on top. Impossible for me to actually take the whole paint off. So a good sanding. Give it a key for the primer. So the primer that I used, as you see on there now, is Mr. Surfacer 1200, and that's mixed with a 50-50 with Mr. Colour Leveling Thinner, and I think that's come out quite well. So that should give me a good finish for the colour scheme that I've now chosen, or it's going to supersede the yellow scheme. So it's going to be this one. And looking at it, I've got most of this just masking off and painting black, a little bit of fluorescent there, and then the rest are just little bits of decals, so hopefully those decals won't cause me a problem. And I completely decided to avoid this colour scheme because there's a decal there, and taking note of the previous decal that I put on there when it was yellow, I've got no confidence in that, so I'm just going to completely avoid this now, so that hopefully we'll come back with this looking very much different to what I really wanted. Right, I have a piece of stretched sprue here. Unfortunately, it doesn't come with the kit. We have to do this ourselves. It's this piece here. What I've got to do is, I haven't got any rod, so I'm going to make it myself from stretched sprue, which I've already done. That's this here, and I'm looking at about 12 millimeters per side. So I think I've got enough from about here to about there. So I shall cut that in a short while, but I thought while I'm at it, I may as well show you how I do it, because sometimes you can put this stuff under, like say, a candle, and it's too much heat. So what I tend to do is I tend to use this. So if I come out a bit, All right, I'll just move this to one side so you can see what I'm. That's there, just that there. There we go. And all I'll do is this: fire this up, and I will just move that up and down until the rod starts to bend on me, and then I will pull that like that to wherever I want it to go. So here we go. And then if I'm happy with it, I'll stop, and then I'll let it hang. And within a few seconds that will dry nice and solid. And then there you go. And then there you are, ready for a piece of sprue that you've stretched for whatever thickness you require on your model. There you go. We are now with the final paint job, not the original. The original was yellow. I had a bit of a problem with the decals, as I mentioned and shown earlier. Now what we have is a new color scheme, and this color scheme, I'll just move that out of the way a bit. The new color scheme is what's on front of the box. I've got a couple of little bits to tidy up, but basically that is the color scheme done now, and all I've got to do is put the decals on. So here's all the decals. That's the main lot to go on, and then this is the stencils that I'm going to put on. And what I did in order to make sure I've got everyone I need, basically what I do is I go around the whole of the plan, tick off all the decal that I know that I need. So now I've got all those, they're on here, they're going to be put on the aeroplane. When we come back, they should be loaded on with the undercarriage, and then I can just make a comment as to what I think about the kit, and a few pictures for you to see towards the end. Right, okay, after those short bursts of clips that I've shown getting me to the stage where I changed the colour and add a few extra bits on there, I've now done all the decals on this particular colour scheme. So I'll just show you, there you go. And what I've done is I've also coated it with another coat of varnish to protect the decals. The next thing that I want to do once the varnish is fully dried is add a bit of a pin wash down all the panel lines, dirty up a little bit underneath the undercarriage, just give it a bit of realism. One thing I'm not going to do is a decision I've made is not to put the smoke section on top of the canopy for this particular subject. I would have if I had picked this subject from the beginning, but because of the tragedy I had with the yellow paint and the well, not the tragedy with the paint, it was tragedy I had with the decals on the yellow scheme, so led me to change it to this color scheme. I'm not going to faff about trying to mask all this up to get that smoke color on the canopy. I think I might end up damaging it. So what I'm going to do now is, like I say, finish off the pin wash, a little bit of dirtying up underneath, and I'm not going to weather it. There's no point. I've had about enough of it now. My grandson I know he'll love this little model when it's done, and he won't be bothered about the weathering. I'll finish everything else off, and I'll come back with a finished product, a little bit of what I think about the kit, and some pictures for you to see the finished item. Here we are with the finished model. It wasn't my intended colour choice. My colour choice was this on the right, the scheme B, but unfortunately I had a disaster with the decals. So I tried to recover as best I could, but it just wasn't going to happen. I had to resort to changing the colour schemes. It's not totally 100% how it should be. I have missed off the top piece here, where it's a smoked or a slightly tinted top. I just thought, with the amount of issues that I had trying to recover what the bad job that happened with the decals, I just thought, no, if I do this and mask it up, I could end up making more hassle and more mess than I need. What you see in front of you is a finished model as far as I'm concerned, and my little grandson, he isn't really going to notice that. I think I've done a fair representation of this colour scheme, and I'm not going to slag the kit off. I think the kit is very nice, albeit there are some building issues in there, but there's nothing major. That's part of modelling anyway, to try and overcome those little issues that occur from time to time with a model anyway. Like I say, the only major bit I had was with the decals, but I don't know whether that would be the same with all the other kits that are out there, whether I just happened to have a mishap with the decal sheet. Yeah, it was an enjoyable build, apart from, like I said, the decals. But when all said and done, nice little kit. Going to go on my grandson's shelf. I hope you like the build. I hope you like the process. The process for the build itself, it turned out to be more of a how-to, slight tutorial. Anything that I come across, I thought I'd put that up on the video for you to see, to sort of help you out if you decide to do this kit. I wouldn't be put off with it. I would say a beginner would do quite well with this kit. So what I'll do is I will leave you with some finished pictures. Like I say, it's not turned out how I really would like to have been, but it's okay. I know I can do better. Just a shame that I had to really just recover it by going back over the original paint that's on there. If you like it, give us a thumbs up, subscribe if you want, and hopefully you'll come back in the next build. So the next build will be something a bit more interesting, and hopefully you'll like that one. So look out for it, and see you in a short while.